Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name is Stuart. Warlord Games have just announced Pike Shotte Epic Battles, and for regular followers of the channel will know that's something I just have to talk about. So today is Wednesday the 15th of Feb 2023, and it's been hinted that a new announcement was coming for a while. There's been a few rumours about what it might be. I for one thought it was going to be this for quite a while, and I changed my mind to something related to Hail Caesar, with Hail Caesar version 2 out. And then I think we had rumours coming out of CanCon in Australia and at the LVO, where Warlord Games' representatives there had told people, well, it sounds like that anyway, told people that it was going to be ECW for the next Epic release. And we've all been hedging our bets since then. This was the original rumour I'd heard way back when Napoleonics was first announced but not yet released. I heard that this was next on the cards, along with a few other people, so it was quite interesting. I would have been happy with either, but this is definitely something I'd had on my list of periods to play. So let's take a quick look at what's been announced today and what you can pre-order from Friday the 17th. Now, you may be watching this after that period. And for the second part of this video, I'm joined by Miller from Miller's Miniatures. For those of you that follow his channel will know that he's an English Civil War gamer, knows an awful lot about the period, and knows a lot about the Pike and Shot rules as well. So basically getting an expert on to cover a game system that I'm unsure of, a period that I'm sketchy on, so we can really look at this release with a bit of context, discuss the way the sets may be used, how useful they are, how well he thinks they're balanced, and all those little sort of tidbits of information and things that I may miss as a completely new gamer to this period. So this is the Warlord community page, which I've shown on the channel before, and this is their announcement article for the release. Incoming Pike and Shotte Epic Battles. The cat's finally out of the bag after many months of speculation from the community and many more of hard work from the design studio team. We're delighted to announce the arrival of the next installment in the Epic Battles series, Pike and Shotte. Epic Battles Scale Warfare enters the bloody 17th century with a monster starter set, 4 new plastic sets, casualty markers, and a pair of scenery kits. Let's take a look at these latest additions to the world of Epic Battles. So I'm not going to read the rest of the article for you, but that is what we've got coming. So essentially, with Pike and Shotte, this starter set can be used for the English Civil War and the 30 Years' War as well. And it looks like it's the same size as the Epic Battles American Civil War Gettysburg box set, so that should give us a little bit of an idea of what to expect with prices. There's a lovely shot there of all the stuff that you'll get in your starter set. And it looks like here they've reworked the Pike and Shotte rules a little like they did for Epic Battles Waterloo campaign, where they've sort of made it into a smaller booklet, revamped it into an A5 size book, and maybe added a few extra bits that relate to the period alone. It'll be fantastic anyway. But everything you need. Now, I don't have any Pike and Shotte rules or any of the supplements as it stands, so that will be perfect for me. And like many of you watching this may be your first foray into this period as well. There's a nice picture of the box. We've got pictures of the frames. So you see there, there's English Civil Wars Infantry Battalion, and we've got 30 Years War Infantry Battalion, and the only difference is the flags, so you'll be able to buy them as the individual box sets that come with the relevant flags depending on which conflict that you're fighting, but these miniatures will work with both. And there you have a cavalry and artillery sprue as well, so there are 2 frames by the looks of things for this, and both those sets are available the same way as the English Civil War stuff is, so one for the 30 Years War, one for the English Civil War. Then some casualty markers, which we've seen for both American Civil War Epic Battles and also for Waterloo campaign Epic Battles. And then, like the other releases, we have a number of MDF scenery kits, and I'm pretty sure, without it saying here, I don't think, that these will be made by Sarissa Precision, who have made the other kits and partnered with Warlord Games on those. So fantastic. First wave of Pike and Shotte Epic Battles will be available to pre-order Friday the 17th of the 2nd, 2023 at 2 PM. So I may well be busy at that point this Friday. In addition to the release article, we have a secondary article, and it's designer notes by Steve Morgan, who's the author of the Pike and Shotte rules. And just like we saw for the Epic Battles Waterloo campaign, the rule book that is provided, while at its core is Pike and Shotte in this case, was black powder in the Waterloo's case, has been stripped down to only cover the necessary periods. So with the Waterloo book, it removed all of the black powder periods and references that weren't relevant to the non-Napoleonic era, and it looks like they've done the same thing with the Pike and Shotte Epic Battles rulebook. As it says here, though fundamentally Pike and Shotte Epic Battles has the same mechanical framework as its 28mm cousin, the new rulebook found in the Push of Pike starter set includes within its pages a number of changes that really allow the gamer to practically play games on a truly grand scale. This Epic Battle scale allows exactly for this. So it carries on. These rules are particular to the English Civil Wars and the 30 Years' War, unlike the original Pike and Shotte book, which covered all of the 1500 to 1700. So it looks like they've done a very, very similar thing as I suspected. So let's have a little look on the Warlord Games web store as well. You can see all of the new releases up there ready. There's no prices on them as yet, but it gives us an idea of what's going to be available to pre-order, and we can guess the prices anyway by comparing them to the starter sets for the American Civil War Gettysburg set. That's a 2-player starter set, which supposedly is exactly the same size as the starter set for this. So I'd say look at the price of that, and we'd have a price for this or something very, very close to it. We look at these. So this is the standard set. So let's have a little look at it and find out what you get inside. So there's a nice picture of the contents of the box. We can scroll through those and have a look. So there is some painted regiments. There is the cavalry and officers and artillery. There are some more painted regiments. There's the scenery made by Sarissa Precision, I'm assuming. Looks really cool. And there's a picture of the book. Some pictures of the pages inside. Frames in 2 colours, which they tend to do for their starter sets. The idea is you can just pop them out and get a game with them straight away. And there's the cavalry and the artillery. And the flag sheets in 2 styles. So you've got the English Civil War and you've got the 30 Years' War flag sheets, and there's the picture of the box. Now if we read the contents description, we get tan and grey hard plastic figures, 6 mounted battalion commanders, 6 ensigns, 6 mounted cornets, 14 combined Pike and Shotte regiments, 80 soldiers in each, 36 commanded shot, 60 cavalry, 12 cuirassiers, 18 mountain dragoons and 30 dismounted dragoons, 6 Saker cannon and 6 falconet light guns. So that seems like a lot to me, but not knowing the period very well at all, that's why I'm going to rely on Miller in a short while to help us out with what kind of army that might help us build, or what 2 armies hopefully it would help us build. You get your green plastic bases for all of the miniatures. You get your A5 256-page Pike and Shotte Epic Battles rulebook, quick play reference card, assembly and painting guide leaflet, flag sheets for both English Civil War and 30 Years' War, laser cut MDF fortified manor house and complex, and your usual 6-sided dice. So I've had the starter sets for the American Civil War. That's been improved now. I believe they're even better. And this seems to resemble the 2-player starter sets for the American Civil War more, so a much bigger mix of troops and different types, all on 2 frames essentially, which is really, really exciting. And I think also returns a little bit to the simplicity of the early American Civil War release. I think there was 11 frames so far for the Napoleonic release. I've got a feeling this one will be slightly smaller, and the fact they're all dual use like the American Civil War release as well, I can see this being a slightly smaller one, or at least simpler one in that sense, which I think is a good thing. And then you've got all of these collections. So the all-in collection here is going to have that starter set and then all the extra bits as well. So this is where things start getting expensive, no doubt, when it happens. And there you go. So you've got your starter set. You've got a battalion of each, extra cavalry of each, your casualty markers, and all of the extra terrain and things as well. So that's going to be your all-in. So if you really want a really big the starter set and get into this in a big way, that would be the way to go. And there's going to be all these different other kinds of iterations, and I won't go through them all in detail because that'd be boring. Go on the website and do it yourself. There's cavalry wing collections, there's just individual boxes, sort of battalion boxes, so you can buy them right now for American Civil War and Napoleonics, where you get basically 3 frames for a box, so 3 frames of the infantry or 3 frames of the cavalry. So those of you who don't want to go ahead and buy the big starter, you can just buy the individual boxes, especially if you already have Pike and Shot. The rules, I can't imagine being very different at all. There'll be a few lines here or there about how to form up your regiments when they're on this sort of style basing, but I'm sure you could make do and still play. And then you have your 2 scenery kits here, and as I said before, your casualty markers on their own. So all in all, a pretty nice rounded release in layman's terms. So those of you who know the period might be screaming at the screen saying, well, what about this, what about that? It did sound like there will be future waves. I think there will be follow-up waves. I imagine there will be some extras. What they are, I don't know. I'll probably save that speculation until I chat to Miller in a moment. So as promised, I have Miller from Miller's Miniatures here with me to actually help me out with what all this stuff in these lovely boxes is. Hi Miller, how are you doing?
I'm very well, how are you?
This is where we pretend we haven't just been talking about all these other things for about half an hour. So Miller runs Miller's Miniatures, a lovely YouTube channel that covers a lot of English Civil War stuff, and he knows far more about English Civil War than I do. So I thought, you know what, rather than just babbling on about plastic frames that I don't know what all the things are, let's get someone on that knows what they're talking about, so we can give you guys a little bit more context to this release. So Miller, do you want to spend a couple of minutes sort of introducing yourself and your channel and your English Civil War credentials?
Yeah, can do. So I'm Miller, or James, but everyone calls me Miller. I do Miller's Miniatures, which is just a channel that was always just designed for me to show off my hobby and what I've been up to. But majority of it has always been my key interest, which is the English Civil War. When I was born into the English Civil War Society. My mum joined when she was 17, so I grew up knowing it and I loved it. I've grown up on it for years. And I used to do a lot of the actual reenactments myself. And then obviously when I got into wargaming and I realised that Pike and Shot existed, or that Warlord Games did English Civil War stuff, then I was sold on that for ages. And then obviously as you progress more into the wargaming, you find these other companies, and I've just slowly gained more and more ECW stuff and ventured off into some of the other periods around Pike and Shot, but that's my main period. And I love it. Anything to do with it, any history that comes up, anything I'm all over it.
It's your home. So this is maybe one of the things you've been waiting for. So we first spoke, when was it we spoke about me starting doing English Civil War? And it was at least a year ago, probably 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
We were debating whether this was going to happen.
Yeah, I think you started doing some smaller scales, and you decided that ECW might be the thing, but you held off, luckily.
Yeah, I think it might have been before Napoleonic Waterloo Epic was released. I think American Civil War was out. I think there were rumours that it might be English Civil War coming, and I was talking to you about it, and I said, if not, I might do it in Pendragon in 10mm. And we talked a little bit about it, and then I sort of held off. Did loads of other things in the meantime, and we're finally here. It's out, and you're excited about it. So I thought definitely tap in. Now you've already done a video today and put that out, so I'll pop a link to that in the show description if you've not seen that already. Go and watch. Miller probably now going to repeat all the stuff that he's already said in his video, but that's cool. Go and check that out if you haven't seen it already. And I thought what I'd do is kind of get Miller on to help me understand what's in this box and how it will relate to playing Pike and Shot, and get you his opinions on it, really, about whether it's a good set to play Pike and Shot with. And I'm sure there'll be many opinions on the internet, it being the internet. But this way, at least
I've seen a few, yeah.
I've been avoiding it mostly because I haven't had time, but I'm going to log on later after this and have a look at all the chatter. Mainly people complaining that it wasn't American War of Independence. I've seen that as funny. and people that are upset that it's not expansions to the Napoleonic range already, which I got a feeling that this stuff has been planned a long way out. So before they decided to expand the Waterloo range and the Napoleonic range. Those things will come, I am sure. So I thought we'd cover a little bit. So my own background with the English Civil War is pretty low. I did have 2 English Civil War armies way back in the early 90s. They were in 2mm. They came in a single set. The rules are on a what would be called index cards. You're probably too young to know what an index card is, Miller, but these are these small cards that are about 6 inches by 4 inches. And it had 6 cards in there. I think 4 of them were rules, and another couple were like scenario type things. And you got your dice in the box, all in this little cardboard box, and these 2mm miniatures, which took me sort of a day to paint. And it was a lovely little game. And it was one of those things, I'm interested to learn about English Civil War, and I picked it up and I read one book. And I can't remember any of it. We're talking 93, 94. So I've forgotten most of it. And I went off to uni in Worcester and lived there for about 10 years. And there's a place in Worcester called the Commandery, which is an English Civil War museum. There is a Battle of Worcester, which you'll know about more than me. But I did do a little bit of reading around the period then. Definitely interested me. But it's been something that's always been in my hobby to-do list. I want to do this period one day, and I want to do it so I can learn a little bit about it. But I love the look of it. It's one of those. I look at miniatures on the table all lined up with the pikes, and I always think that looks awesome. I want to play it, but I don't know anything about the warfare really. I don't know anything much about the weapons, so this is where your expertise will come in, and I've got a lot of learning to do over the coming months after this has been introduced. Let's start from the beginning. What's your first reaction to the release and the starter set and things? What do you think?
Well, to be fair, there was a moment where I didn't think it was going to be this. I've hoped it was going to be this, and a lot of people thought, well, maybe it would be something to do with the Hail Caesar. But then I thought about it. I was talking to a couple of people, and I thought, well, can you imagine you've just spent so much money on a new rule book for Hail Caesar, and then within a couple of days they've just released something that's going to come with the rule book, and you'd feel a bit cheated. You've bought the rule book twice then, in a sense. Yeah. So I'm quite glad it was this. And looking at the box set, even just the base box set, I think it is a perfect way to start the game. If anything, I wouldn't want to say you don't need to expand on it, but you don't need to expand on it to be able to play a battle. Other than big battles like Marston Moor or Naseby, or even maybe Cheriton or something like that, where they're larger battles, you're not going to need, or there isn't going to be so much on the table. Things like Waterloo, where there's over 200,000 people there. These battles, I think the biggest battle that there was, Marston Moor, I think there was about 20,000 people, which is a big battle, but you don't need a lot of regiments and things for it. So this, I think you get 7 regiments aside and 3 units of horse. I think that's fine. I mean, expand on the horse. I think you're definitely going to need more horse units. Right. But the infantry, I think you're fine. Maybe get a couple more so you can change out the regiments. But I think what you get in the box, 6 cannons aside, I think they work out that the falconets and sakers, so the falconets are a light cannon, the sakers are a sort of medium to heavy cannon, but you can treat it as a medium. Mm-hmm. And I think they've hit it on the nail with the way they've divided it up. Right. I think it's a perfect way to start. You've got your regiments of foot, which are your pike, and your musketeers, and then you've got your cavalry and your guns. It's just that they've hit the nail on the head with it, if you ask me. Fantastic. It's kind of what I was hoping for. I've got a lot of projects on, so I'm speaking for, like many wargamers, I've got lots of wargaming projects on, and I always knew the Napoleonic one would be this really big, ongoing kind of thing, and then the American Civil War one to a certain extent. So I wanted, as much as I love a huge release on this, I also quite like the idea that I can buy the starter set, and that might well be it, and I can make 2 armies out of it, and it will definitely get a game on a 6x4 easier, whereas my Waterloo collection is going to be so big that I will need bigger tables to play it on. So it's a different size project for me. So from a selfish point of view, that's quite cool, and it's the kind of thing I was hoping for, just to save my own hobby bandwidth and time, really. But it's good to know also from any player point of view that they can pick this up, and there's a really good 2-player starter set there, rather than one you always think, that doesn't really work, you need this and that and stuff. So that's really encouraging coming from someone who knows the period and already games the period. So let's talk a bit about the miniatures then. So what have you've been looking at, like all of us, at pictures of the miniatures? Have you got any thoughts on those? I've noticed that, I think for the scale, the sculpts are brilliant. I mean, I've seen some close-ups, obviously, that we've seen on their page and things like that. The detail is fine. Is it's spot on, really. You know, they're basic. They've not gone over the top. They're not, especially on the pikemen. They're quite simple. You know, you're only going to see your tunic and your back and breastplate and your mori, and they've not everything looks the same. The stands all look that little bit different, and I noticed with the musketeers have all got the musket rests. Now, the musket rests are very early in the English Civil War, but throughout the 30 Years' War, which is just before, they've used the musket rests. So it covers both the periods, and it's definitely focused more at the early stages of the English Civil War, because the way that the units would have been divided. So you'd have at the start, you would have had it was always divided into thirds. So you'd have like 2/3 your musketeers and a third would be pikes.
Right.
And obviously, as the war progresses, you have more and more musketeers as the musket and gunpowder becomes more available. So I like that they've kind of done it at that early part. And obviously, if you want to do it later, you can fill out the blocks. They look great. The cavalry look brilliant. I'm amazed at how they've managed to fit so much on the cavalry sprue. I think the cavalry sprue is brilliant because it covers all those little units that I was convinced would be their sire cast or the Resin Plus or whatever it is they're calling it now. I think Resin Plus. I was convinced that things like the cuirassiers, I thought, well, they're not going to squeeze them on. Surely not. You'll have to buy them separately, but they're not. They're on there. Same with the dragoons. I thought they're brilliant. I like the commanded shot. I think if anything, you could probably fit some of those commanded shot on with the musketeers to make them look like they're actually firing, as opposed to the ones that are all just standing at rest.
Yep.
The one thing I'll be interested to see is how strong the pikes are, because I know a lot of people, obviously, they don't like the pikes with Warlord stuff because it's easy with the Warlord Twin is because they snap. A lot of them change them for brass or change them for broom bristles.
Yeah.
Both great ways of doing it. I mean, I've done that with smaller stuff before, so it'd be interesting to see how strong they are. And the flags, I think it's quite nice that they've done 2 flags, because obviously with the English Civil War and a bit the period, you had a lot more flags in it. It's not like you would have the King's colours and the regimental colours. You would have multiple flags, each for each of the captains and the lieutenants of the units.
Right.
So that would almost denote your rank. So I like that they've done that. Really, really looking forward to getting hold of one and having a look at it, seeing the versatility of it. And I think that it's going to be interesting to do. I'm struggling to work out exactly where they're going to progress or add extra kits for the extra waves, because they seem to have covered most of it in the start. It'd be interesting to see where they go from with it.
That is really interesting, and I don't know anywhere near enough about the period to even to kind of even guess at that. So the fact that you've sort of, are so surprised about how much is on that cavalry sprue, that secondary sprue there, is really encouraging. So maybe there will only be a second wave or something. I do like that this has got the essence. This is going back to the early release. So this has got the essence of that American Civil War release, which is that simple, dual purpose, dual side frame, and the fact that you can use it for 30 Years' War as well is really, really good. I do like the fact that they're just by the natural design of the way these regiments need to be set up, you've removed the frontage problem that you've got with the American Civil War. I think even the recommended large regiment is still like 5 or 6 wide, which is ridiculous, and even the Napoleonic, it's 4. And this is just because of the way you have to set it up with that pipe block. It's perfect. You've got your you got your 3 stands wide, which again saves you table real estate for those wanting to play at home on 6x4s. It should work quite nicely.
I was just going to say that things like large units as well. I know people a lot before with the Napoleonics and the ECW, like, well, how do you denote large units? Well, without making them, twice as long, which is unfeasible. But I think with the larger units, all you would have to do is add behind. So obviously, where you've got 1 or 2 strips of the musketeers, you do, musket blocks as opposed to wings. How they would have fought. The same with the pikes. You just make them deeper as opposed to wider, and it still gives you that almost versatility of being able to move around.
Almost feels like this the epic setup in terms of the size of the bases and what you get on a frame maybe works better for this period than it did for the others, at least in terms of what you naturally get on a frame and how it sort of sets up. In terms of the warfare then, so how well will that transpose to the tabletops? How much space do we need for maneuver to make a game very much sort of play the way that a battle may have? Do we need loads and loads of table space, or could you think you can fit a decent sized game on a regular sized gaming table?
Well, yeah, this is something I'm actually really excited for about it. Obviously, I play the period in 28mm, and I've always thought it's quite, unless you're playing on something like a big 12x6 table, if you're playing on a 6x4 table down the club, like with a mate, it's quite hard to represent the way the tactics would work. So with the pikes and the muskets, you'd have probably had a line of a few regiments and then kind of another line. And to the wings, you'd have had the cavalry. It was quite hard to do that with it's only 4 foot deep, you know. Yeah. So something small like this, I think you could easily do a fairly large battle on a 6x4, having the multiple lines and having your cavalry flank around the sides, well, after, you know, or attack the wings, and then they would either, well, if you're the royalists, you'd sod off and loot the baggage train. But if you're the parliamentarians, you know, you might have been a bit more disciplined in some cases, and you would come round and attack from the rear, you know, with good old parliamentarians, you know. But
showing your allegiance.
I think there. It's definitely no bias towards me, I'm afraid. I definitely think it's going to be a lot better for the tactics. I've looked at trying to do it in smaller scales before, and I've looked at different companies in 6mm and 10mm, and some of the newer releases in 15mm from some companies. And I think that this is it's affordable, easily. You know, you've got that battle in the box, and I think it works really, really well for the period. And obviously it's not just English Civil War, obviously it's still 30 Years' War. So even if, like I'm saying, with the smaller scale battles, you can still do the larger 30-year war battles, and it will still work really, 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 really well. Yeah.
So for people that are new to the period, like myself, what can we expect with the kind of painting side of things? How generic were uniforms and things? How is it as specific as Napoleonic era might be, or can people get away with doing sort of some more generic style of painting?
So fairly basic with the painting style. So a regiment, the model which come in later towards the end of the First Civil War, there aren't general uniforms. Your regiment is provided your supplies by the commander or the colonel, so they have to pay for it themselves, and it would normally just whatever was readily available or cheap.
Yeah.
So, which is why the New Bundle Army go red, because Venice red is cheap, which is why red coats come along. But so things, whatever was cheap. So, depending on the regiment, you'll have the flag colour. Now, most people just think, oh, it's a blue flag, so it's a blue tunic, but that wasn't the case. But when it comes to painting, other than a couple of regiments, and not a lot of people know, it's all sort of speculation. So someone might say wrong, but really they could be wrong because we don't know 100%. You know, right. Even with flags, we go, well, that's the flag. Well, some people say the colours of the flags are wrong, you know, and the chevrons and the icons. So you're basically going to have your reds and your blue tunics, your green tunics, and then the trousers will just be a mix of whatever their clothes would have been. So they'd had blacks and greys and brown trousers and things like that. There's the whole sash sort of thing. So the parliamentarians were known for having orange sashes, while the royalists were having red sashes.
Yeah,
that's not black and white, is that? You know, there were other colour sashes that were used, but it's always just that's what's known. With, you know, it's the go-to sort of things. So you can't really. There's no button counting as a sense with it. You can't really be wrong. I was going to say there's some great source material out there. Keep Your Powder Dry is a great website that I've always used to go to. He's a guy who's got a blog, and he's gradually been adding to it over the years. And he's got lists of regiments, coats, and things like that. That's always a great website to use.
Excellent. That's good. Well, that's one. Will, if you share the link with me, and I'll pop that in the video description as well. I was going to say, so you could theoretically get away with doing some generic paint jobs and maybe even swapping flags around for different games if you wanted to do it that way. I know some people, the kind of, you love this period so much that I no doubt that you will paint a regiment as a regiment, and that is that regiment. But someone who maybe plays this as a secondary period, like myself, maybe might have a more generic approach to it. But I wanted to do a certain action. Is that feasible enough, or am I pushing it a little bit too far?
100%. So when I first started doing my 28mm army, I had done the units of colour, and then I had my ensigns, so the flag carriers, separate. So I could change out and go, well, this is a different regiment now. And it's the same now. I've spoken to a couple of guys, and they want to do 30 Years' War, and I kind of still want to do the English Civil War.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe you could cut the flagpole off, drill a little hole, and put a brass flag in it, so you can change out the flags and have them between English Civil War, 30 Years' War. So again, there's nothing to say that it's as simple as that's the Kosovo War. They can't wear anything else. I mean, you can just change the flags out and be fine with it. To be fair, I wouldn't even mind using an English Civil War army in a 30 Years' War game, because
that's my next question. So you
on the table, no one's going to know, really.
No one's going to know, especially you can just change your flag. That's really interesting. So I thought of doing something like that with the Napoleonics, actually, and I haven't got round to it yet, but I've still got a lot left to go. And it was about just topping the little fanion off the top of the flag. I don't know what it's called in this era, but trimming that off the top, press molding it or 3D printing some, and then just having one glued in the top of each flag, with just the hollow bit where the flag slips over the top of the banner poles. You don't even need to pin it then. You just have
and then just slot it on and off.
Just slot them on and off. And I thought about doing something like that for the Napoleonics, because as far as you go with the Napoleonics, it's just facing colours really for most of the British regiments anyway. So you got, I don't know, 5 or 6 with yellow, 5 or 6 with green, 5 or 6 with blue, and so on and so on. So, but I'm swapping them around means you can double up, make a small collection, go a little bit further, and I find that quite interesting for doing stuff. Because I do like to pick a battle and focus on it, but I was thinking of maybe approaching it slightly differently from this and going a little bit more generic. So let's carry on. So we've also got some terrain and things like that as part of the release. Have you had a look at that stuff? Or
yeah, the terrain looks pretty nice. I like they've done like a walled manor, which is quite nice, because you've got things like Basing House, which was a house owned by the Royalists, and I think on a few occasions the parliamentarians tried to attack it and failed every time. I think even on one occasion, one regiment tried to scale the walls. It's almost from a sharp thing, where they tried to scale the walls, got to the top of the ladders, and realised the ladders weren't tall enough to reach the top of the walls. So that scuppered that plan. So that'd be quite a cool battle to do with that.
Absolutely.
And I've seen with some of the other the pre-order, and I'm quite keen to see what they're like, even if not just for this period. I think they look quite nice with the windmill and the couple of houses, and the three little the redouts for the artillery pieces. I think they look quite nice. It's quite good to see what they are. I don't know who do them though. I don't know if they're Sarissa, because I know that Sarissa do a lot of the other stuff for the Epic.
I'm going to I'm going to click on one now. I'm doing it, and people will see me looking down, so I've got my iPad open as well, so I can see these all at the same time. And I'm not sure that it says in the description. It doesn't normally, but Sarissa have done all of the American Civil War and the Napoleonic period stuff. So these look like Sarissa.
Detailed. They look more like almost a resin. Those two.
It might just be the way they're painted. Let's look at a closer look at the picture. It looks, I think that these they're very much, you can see they're MDF. Absolutely, they're MDF. It's just layered on the inside, and it looks like, I'll be interested in whether you get the scouring pads to make the roof on it, or whether that's an extra. I suspect if it's in the picture, you probably get
that'll be wave 2, the scouring pad.
But they do look fantastic, and just shows what you can do. Now, one thing I did find with these before is that they are very true scale 15mm Sarissa stuff. So their footprint is quite chunky compared to some. So if you need a lot of buildings on the table, it can take up quite a lot of your space. So I know a lot of people use 10mm for epic scale stuff, or even for 15mm gaming, because it represents better. But what I find is if you've got one, you only want 1 or 2 buildings, then that's perfect because
Just
they
breaks
represent.
it up, doesn't
but if
it?
you
It
want a
just
lot, if you're going to do a town
Right.
or something, you might find it takes up a lot of the space. But they're such good value. I'll definitely be picking those up. Whether or not I end up buying more boxes of infantry and cavalry and stuff, I think picking up the extra terrain is always good fun. Then you got your casualty markers as well, which again normally little resin kind of discs and things. So, you can use dice and stuff for those. They're always a nice extra. I suspect they're the freebies with some of the packs when we get the pricing on it on Friday. I imagine when we look at the bundles that it will be.
I'm interested to see the pricing. I mean, I can only afford so much, but I think I've already spoken to the missus and she's prepared for the bankruptcy. So
I don't know what I'm going to get. I may just get the standard starter and then see how we go from there, because I'm not sure what kind of size project I want to. It depends on what kind of saving you get with the buildings, because I'm not sure yet I want to buy the extra boxes. There's a lot of choice. I think the price wise we can probably guess what it is based on the Gettysburg set, because they've made a point of saying that it's exactly the same amount as the new Gettysburg set. So the Gettysburg 2-player starter set is £119. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was about that for the standard starter. And then,
I mean, I'm happy for that. I mean, even if you go in with a friend, and you say you have one half and I'll have the other half. I mean, what's that? It's 60 quid between a pair of you, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's perfect, really.
Absolutely.
And I like that they've done the 2-player as opposed to the same as they did with the ACW, which they didn't do with the Napoleonic.
Yeah.
It's allowed that to have a game, whereas you have to buy 2 lots and you can't have a game unless your mate's doing it. So
no, I still hope that they'll do that for the Napoleonic at some stage, bring out a smaller 2-player. And the new American Civil War starter sets are great. They've really nailed it with those second sort of releases of them. Now they've added the more plastic in, so this feels like a somewhere in the middle of it. But I'm guessing they just look at the size of the game and what people would want, and you might not want whole army, £120 army boxes, whereas Napoleonics, they know that people are just going to want regiment on regiment on regiment on regiment. But it looks like everything I'd hoped it would be. Actually, which sounds a bit sycophantic, but I'm quite pleased with what's there.
I can't see what other. There's a few things I think, if anything, that they've not done, which I think will be the later releases. So obviously they've not done any main commanders. So I'd wondered if they would put, say, Fairfax or the Earl of Essex or Prince Rupert or something like that on with the pre-orders, like what they did when I think they did General Lee on the ACW stuff when they first released that. I don't know if they did with the Napoleonics. I know they did them later, but I don't know if they did them on the pre-order.
No, I don't think they did on the pre-order. What did you get? You got little vignette type models. So you had
with the eagle, wasn't it?
Yes, so Ewart's Eagle, and you had the Enforcer with the French Sparta set, and then you had some, I can't remember if it was any particular person, but you had a mini diorama with the Prussian starter set. So they did something different.
So
there.
I think with that, that we could expect some.
Yeah, because that is missing. Generals. Well, not missing, but there isn't that would, I imagine, would be available to look at now if it was coming. We just wouldn't know the price. So yeah, commanders. Yeah, they're going to do command, and I imagine they'll match the American Civil War and the Napoleonic commanders. So 5 in a box, because that seems to be the format. There'll be Warlord resin. Hopefully the new formula, because it is a little bit better.
If you look on one of the photos, there's a photo which shows the 2 photos of the inside of the rules. Someone's actually pointed out to me that in the left-hand corner or the right-hand corner, there's a very small version of Prince Rupert, or the same version of the 28mm Prince Rupert. So I'm expecting, obviously, they will do them. It's just when.
Oh, I know where that picture is. Yeah, I'm scrolling around looking for it, and that doesn't make good video. But I'll pop a little. If I can find it, I'll pop an image on the screen. But yeah, I think they'll do it. It seems to make sense to do a Royalist commanders and they can do 4 sets as well or more. How many nations are we talking? 30 Years War. What we? So I know nothing. So what won't they do for those for commanders?
30 Years War. I think if anything, they could do maybe some stuff for the Polish or something like that. Some winged lancers or something like that. Maybe for them. I think that they will probably release a Covenanter for the English Civil War. So that's the Scots, which come in towards Master Moore sort of time. And I think that will be sort of like a Prussian release where they released it later on, which would be quite nice. And you'll have some lancers and things that they would have used, which would be quite good. 30 Years War, it's not my strongest point, but I think they mostly have covered most of the the generic forces. I think if anything, it will be extra waved special units like the Hussars or Covenanters, maybe with some Lancers. I think with the English Civil War stuff, they might release some resin lifeguards for the Royalists, or some Ironsides, which are just heavier troop of horse that Cromwell would have used.
Heard of those.
I think they might be sort of like they did the Eye Brigade, or they did the Imperial Guard for the Napoleonics. Those sorts of things, which I think would be quite nice to see. I think that's maybe where they'll go with it. Maybe some other artillery like mortars or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, so there is quite a lot they could expand to, but it sounds like, to sum it up, there's a lot they could expand to, but in terms of an English Civil War starter, for sure, it's actually really well rounded, and covers most of the things you would need, which is really good. Whereas I think the other, just because of the size of them, the other periods they've done before, there was stuff that people were straight away waiting for, going, oh, okay, well, this is good, but I want this. This has got to come. We need our Highlanders, we need our riflemen, or we need our, with the American Civil War, they needed everything else other than the standard troops. Whereas here, it feels like you said, there's a lot covered, which is really good.
Yeah, there's nothing missing. I thought, oh, maybe the commanders, like just generic commanders, but even I saw that they were in there with the little flags, and I thought, no,
I like the fact there's one guy on foot of those as well. So that's quite interesting. So for the American Civil War, Napoleonic is just one dude on a horse, and they're fine, but they look a little bit kind of, I don't know, strange out on their own. So I put them on command stands with a few others, and I'm sure people will do that with these. But again, I find that those ones with the guy standing as well already looks a little bit more like a realistic command stand. So it's really, really interesting. So to finish off then, do you have plans for this? Are you going to start a particularly new project, or are you just going to kind of paint anything as everything? Or
I think whether or not I start a new project, I mean, I've always said if this came along, I would definitely have a look, and it's come along and I'm more than impressed. So if I do it, which I will get the starter set, and I will be doing both sides. As much as it's going to pay me to paint Royalists, I will do it. It will be crudely painted in comparison to the Parliamentarians, but I will do it just for be able to have a game with it. And then if I'd said maybe try and do Marston Moor 1-to-1, but 20,000 soldiers is a bit of a feat in itself, so maybe not.
You might still need a tennis court to play that one on. Yeah.
Well, it depends if they do the Scots, but yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. I want to have a look at the sprues. Definitely have a look at the sprues, and then see how much, if you can change them about. I'd love to see what it would look like, that entire regiment on a single base as well. Make that sort of each of the bases sort of a single thing, as opposed to moving around.
You could make a little movement tray.
I am wondering. Sorry,
you could make a little movement tray for it, I suppose, couldn't you? If it's
you could do. The one thing I am curious as to how to do is with the period, you have the hedgehog formation or schiltron or something like that, where the pikes would form a circle and would protect the musketeers that would form into the middle.
Right.
And they would protect it from the cavalry. So obviously with the Napoleonics, where they had the 4 bases, you can quite easily make the square. I don't know how, short of just turning the musketeers outwards and it's sort of making like a weird H sort of shape, how you would represent that, or maybe just put them in a block. Be interesting to play with it a little bit.
I imagine there will be some kind of suggestion for that in the rule book, which we haven't really talked about because it's hard to without seeing it. But it sounds like they're going to make the same kind of adjustments. Now, have you seen the Epic Waterloo book? I
haven't. I've not looked at the other rule books, so I was curious.
American Civil War was just the shrunken black powder book with a separate, slightly larger A4 booklet, which gave mainly history and like 2 or 3 pages that said we recommend this many stands, that kind of stuff. And then when it got to the Napoleonic one, they stripped out all of the stuff in black powder that wasn't related to Napoleonic period. All the imagery was all Napoleonic stuff and all epic, so they kind of reformatted the book. But when you look at it, it's the same rules. There was just the odd line changed here or there, which kind of taken away things that didn't really match the stands.
What about things like measurements? Because I was curious about the measurements. Did they reduce the measurements, or are units almost running across the board?
It gave it an optional rule, really. So in the Napoleonic period, it says it was like an extra little box that says you can do what you want. Some plain half distances, you can play in centimeters. And again, it's historical wargaming, isn't it? So everyone will do their own thing. You don't necessarily need a standardized format. There's no tournament scene. As long as you and your opponent know what you decide to do for that particular game, then great. Because I don't know, when you measure ranges and things, the smaller ranges are good because it gives you more table space, so you've got that kind of feeling of maneuver. But then also sometimes you think, oh my god, we're going to be out of range for everything for quite a while as well. So you make changes. I know Martin Seventh Son, he changes his things on his black powder games, doesn't he? I don't know if he did for when you play Pike and Shot, but I know he sort of changed his own measurements and things just to match the size table he's playing on. So I just encourage people to do what works. And it might well be that you change the movement but leave the shooting ranges to see what feels right. But I wouldn't overthink it. Not with these kind of games. They're all sandbox games, aren't they? From
gentleman's game, isn't it? You're not going to have people crying over it, are you?
Well, and they're designed to be messed around with. That's the whole point of black powder. First was the initial, and then I think Pike and Shot was originally going to be a supplement to black powder, looking at what was in the designer's notes, and obviously became its own rule set. And then obviously Hail Caesar is similar again, isn't it? And they're all sandbox games designed for you to play around with. But I imagine we'll see similar kind of changes in that book where they make it look all relevant to English Civil War, remove all the other stuff. It sounds like the siege rules have been taken out of the supplement or something like that. So there's bits taken out of the other supplements, which they did with the Waterloo one. They took some out of the black powder, out of the Napoleonic supplements, dragged some of those over, and then there'll be a few pages that are different at the beginning that says this is how you form a.
But it's the good thing. It's the good thing with these two periods is that obviously with the Napoleonics you had the extra rule books, but you've got those two. You've got two supplements for Pike and Shot. You've got the Devil's Playground for the 30 Years' War, and you've got To Kill a King for the for the English Civil War, and they're personally, I love the To Kill a King book. It's one of the best books I've got. I'm always flicking through it. I must have read it front to back, God knows how many times, but it's got great rules in it for how to use combined units or using units individually. So it's a fantastic book. It's got a great campaign system in the back. It's just a really good book to use. So if you're going to do English Civil War, and obviously without looking at the ruls that come with the book, definitely pick up one of those supplements as well.
I think I will. It sounds like some bits are taken out of it. We didn't have that with the American Civil War, so you still buy Glory Hallelujah, and I think if they did it now, they would do a similar job where they would take some of bits out of Glory Hallelujah over and reskin the rule book and remove all of the instances when they're talking about the larger base sizes and things like that. But essentially, it's the same rules, and it's the same for black powder, for both sets for black powder, and I'm sure that this will be the same based on what it says in the design notes and description there. But it'll be interesting. So when we get our hands on those, be interesting for those of you who already played Pike and Shot, because I've never played it, we'll be able to see the differences, whereas for me it will just feel like that's the way it always is. So it'll be good to hear. Right then, well, I think this has been an extended kind of review, but I'm glad that you're able to come on and spend some time with me explaining the bits I didn't know, and I'm sure it's far more useful to the people watching the video who, like me, don't know about the period. They've got a bit more of an idea about how good this set is. It definitely gives me perspective, because if I'd be looking at it and saying, well, it looks good to me because it's got a lot of miniatures. I like the look of the miniatures. It looks cool, but to actually have someone that knows the period through gaming and through enjoying the historical side of the period, it sounds like they've done a good job of it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments, people complaining, but that's the internet for you, isn't it? So, Miller, thank you very much for giving away your time this evening. For those of you who haven't already,
having me.
No, it's been a pleasure, and we'll get you back on again when this stuff comes out. But check out the description below, because there will be a link to Miller's video, and go and check his channel out. Make sure you subscribe to his channel and watch all of his videos as well. Thank you very much for coming on. Well, thank you again to Miller for coming on and adding a little bit more expertise and context to the chatter about the new release. I'm really excited to get my hands on some of the miniatures and do some painting tutorials and things. Hopefully I'll be able to get hold of a couple of review frames or something like that. We will see. I've been lucky enough to be able to for the last two Epic releases, so hopefully I'll be able to this side. But if not, I will still release those Epic review videos and painting videos and things as and when I can purchase the miniatures. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the release and whether you're going to be buying into it, whether you like the look of the miniatures, anything you'd like to see, any things you don't like. Keep it positive. If you are new to the channel, please do check out the other videos. There are plenty of other Epic Battles videos on there and ranges and things if you haven't come across it before. And I cover quite a lot of historical periods and games and things, including Middle-earth and fantasy as well. If you have enjoyed the video, please consider giving us a like. It really helps me know that you've enjoyed the video and helps get the video seen by other people. And if you like what you see on the channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.